Welcome to Kitchen Party Rebel. I'm your host, Kate, a politics student, coming to you from my kitchen table here in Mi'kma'ki, the unsurrendered ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. You probably know it better as Nova Scotia, though. This podcast is looking at the Canada we all know and love, but through a lens of decolonization, anti-oppression, and basically just me trying to figure out what the heck it is I'm studying in school anyway. So let's get started. All right, pull up a chair, settle in, maybe scooch over a bit, let someone else in. Don't mind the books and papers everywhere. It's just my attempt at being organized. Welcome to Kitchen Party Rebel, the little educational journal that, kind of grew legs and became a podcast. I'm your host, your neurospicy, non-binary politics student from Atlantic Canada, trying to make sense of this wild country we call home. And listen, when I say trying, I mean trying. Clearly, there's highlighters everywhere, there's tabs and colors that definitely mean something. Not quite sure what, but something. And a brain that loves politics, but processes notes like they're puzzle pieces from 3 different boxes. Yeah. So that's the energy around here. Curious, a bit chaotic, fiercely honest, tiny bit salty, a little bit like the air here in Nova Scotia. Today's episode is really about the origin stories of where the heck this podcast came from. It's the how we got here and what you can expect chat you can normally expect from an intro podcast episode, but kind of organized like a kitchen table at 1:30 in the morning when the party is just winding down and the conversation's just getting good. So, why kitchen parties? Why rebels? Well, if you grew up in Atlantic Canada, you know that the real action never happens in the living room. Oh no, that's where the plastic covered couch is. Nobody ever goes in there. But the good stuff, the gossip, the debate about who should be the next premier, not Tim Houston, or whether Ottawa is even listening this year. That all happens in the kitchen. Over cups of tea, sometimes a little bit of rum. There's always someone leaning against the fridge like they're guarding the state secrets. And honestly, I've always felt home there in that atmosphere. The messy honesty of the kitchen. The way people talk about politics and things like it's not a TED Talk. It's just real people talking and trying to figure out why things are the way they are. So that's the vibe that I wanted for my schoolwork too. I'm a mature politics student at Acadia, and I wanted to create a space where learning felt grounded, conversational, a little bit mischievous. But I wanted a place where I can ask, why does Canada work the way that it does? And who built this institution anyway? What happens when it fails people? Because it does all the time. And maybe the bigger question is, why do Atlantic Canadians always get the short end of the stick? Why is it that we're not in any of the national stories unless something's on fire, newsflash, all of Nova Scotia last summer, or someone's fishery being shut down, or a mix of both? Originally, Kitchen Party Rebel wasn't a show. Probably figured that out by the crappy audio and, the fact that it's all kind of all over the place. Kitchen Party Rebel is my study method. It's my attempt at figuring out what I'm actually reading and looking at. I am a neurodiverse person. My brain does not sit politely and wait for information to just walk in the door. It sprints. It tangles. It decides that learning about Confederation is the perfect moment to wonder whether lobsters are unionized. Are they? It's a vibe. So, to learn, I started writing these little well, not writing, recording these little journal entries. They were supposed to be part of a class assignment of like reflective journaling every week, but it I've never been to do the whole written journal thing. I'm more of an art journal person, and it just made more sense for me to record it as audio. Summaries of class readings, reflections on the political conversations we're having, random rants about how federalism is both brilliant and a hot mess. These audio clips felt a little bit like table conversations to me. Um, because yeah, I am sitting at my kitchen table, although a lot of the little notes were written or recorded while I was driving to and from places. But the point is that they made sense to me in a way that traditional note taking just didn't and doesn't. On an off chance, I replayed one and I thought, whoa, that actually kind of sounds like one of the podcasts I listen to. Maybe even a good one. I'd probably listen to that. So, welcome. Now you're part of my experiment. You're now part of the Kitchen Party Rebel podcast experiment. This show is where I turn what I'm learning in my classes into stories. Real human stories with jokes and the occasional, maybe you're never going to believe this moment. We're going to talk about power and identity and resistance, settler colonialism, federalism, Atlantic regionalism, political institutions, protest movements, basically anything that's happening in the political field and anything that's coming up in my classes. We're going to do it with respect, though, because part of my education is dealing with Indigenous politics and histories and perspectives. That's part of the reason I went back to school. Those topics are foundational to understanding this country. So I want to do it without stereotypes. I don't want to flatten the country into one big giant pancake. We're so much more than that. So I'm going to do this with as much care and context as I can, with the humility of someone who is still learning. So forgive me, because I'm probably going to make mistakes and say something I probably shouldn't, but I will always try to catch it. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely not an academic lecture. It's a conversation between friends with a touch of rebellion, because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is talk plainly and honestly about a system that thrives when people don't. This podcast is definitely not perfect. It's not polished to a mirror shine. I am not sitting in a studio with a bunch of fancy equipment. It's not pretending to speak for anybody but me. I'm just a student trying to figure things out in real time. There will be fragments. There will be tangents. Oh, there will definitely be tangents. There will be rants. There will be moments where I say, okay, wait, hold on. I thought I understood what I was talking about last week, but now my brain is spinning and maybe I didn't understand it the way I thought I should. And maybe that's part of the charm. I do my best learning out loud. We've got episodes coming up on identity in Canadian politics, on Nova Scotia's very weird political culture, on Indigenous resurgence, on why political institutions feel like they were designed by someone who took a really long lunch break and just never came back. We're going to look at the big readings and the thinkers from my classes and break them down in plain language, no jargon, no gatekeeping, because I didn't understand it in the first place. And we'll talk about what it means to be a neurodiverse student navigating a political science world. It's this strange mix of hyper focus and sensory overload and the occasional wait. Hold on. Did I just leave my phone in class? All right. Well, this is a start. This is the kitchen table, a pile of notes, brain that works sideways, and a country that really deserves to be understood beyond all the cliches and headlines. I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad we get to figure this out together, and I'm so glad to invite you to my kitchen, where politics feels alive and personal and not crazy. Well, maybe just a little unruly enough to be interesting. All right, Betty, that's my intro. Let's get this started.